Today, we're going to be talking about the United States moving the United Nations, asking for sanctions to be reimposed on Iran. Now, the sanctions were withdrawn as part of the Iran nuclear deal in 2015, of which the US was also a member. The US, of course, withdrew from this deal in 2018, but the other members have continued to be part of the deal. But it is now insisting that Iran has violated the deal, and so the sanctions, the UN sanctions, should be reimposed. So, to talk more about this, we have with us Prabir Purkayastha. Prabir, thank you so much for joining us. So it's a bit strange right now because we have the United States, which is no longer part of the deal for almost 2 years now, and now it has approached the United Nations demanding that everyone should follow its lead. Although none of the other members of the Iran nuclear deal seem to have any issues with it.
Since this is a show on fault lines, let's look at the fault lines. One, of course, is the obvious fault line between the United States and Iran. And nothing really has changed on that. But what we are seeing is the emergence of a new fault line between the United States and all the other members who signed the agreement along with the United States with Iran in the JCPOA. Now, in that agreement, it's the United States which withdrew in 2018. In fact, it said that we cannot continue with this agreement. We are withdrawing. We're no longer a party to it. That's its official position. Now, if you claim that you are not party to an agreement, can you now come back and say other parties have not fulfilled the agreement and therefore now they must, under the agreement, they must do ABC? So can you, in other words, have your cake and eat it too? Or rather, having eaten it, you really have your cake. Now, this is the really the issue that is there. Now, I'm not going to getting into the legal issues involved, because from what the experts have said, and legal experts have said, the European Union representatives have said, all of them seem to be saying that the original agreement as signed has no proposition that a participating state is a participating state, irrespective of whether it withdraws or it doesn't. So a participating state is a state which is participating in the agreement, not what it was when it was founded. That's only a statement of facts. So these are the participating states which have drawn up the agreement. Therefore, US is trying to play completely different things. One is the agreement itself, and other is the United Nations Security Council resolution. And therefore, this is not a legal or a tenable interpretation. Leaving that out, this is the legal part of it, which, as you would know, lawyers can spend hours discussing splitting hairs in effect. So we don't want to get into lawyerly debates in this. That's best left to lawyers. So the question is really what is likely to happen. There are two things over here. One is, what is US really asking? US is asking that though nobody else wants to sanction Iran, because I have sanctioned Iran, I have pulled out of the deal. So originally, Iran was supposed to have taken a set of steps. Now it's in violation of some of the steps. It's in fact, enriched uranium stock has now gone up after the US withdrew, that it is in violation. So I am bringing this violation to the notice, and the snapback sanctions should take place, even though I'm no longer a party to the agreement. This is a power I have from the original agreement. This none of the other countries are willing to accept. Now, a simple issue is nothing can be placed on the agenda of the Security Council without 9 members voting for it. It needs a majority for the agenda to be passed. So even if they don't have a majority, that's not the issue. You don't need, and there is no veto on the agenda. So therefore, simply put, this agenda may never come up in front of the Security Council if there are not 7, there are I think 9 votes for it. That would be the Security Council majority that would be required. So this may never come on the agenda. Therefore, US would declare that because there is no resolution which stops the snapback has occurred because I have given a notice, and therefore now snapback exists as per United Nations, even if United Nations does not say so. So therefore, any country, and Pompeo is on record saying this, any country which does not obey my sanctions and the United Nations sanctions, which I have declared has taken place now, will be now the subject of my sanctions. So not Iran. Anybody who does not accept what I'm saying will now be subject to my sanctions. It's a threat of sanctioning the whole world. So that is the point I'm making. Of course, the United States, by holding the financial levers of the world, the SWIFT transaction system, effectively has scared all the European allies in not trading with Iran on the question of oil. So Iran is finding it very difficult to sell oil because the transactions are generally completed through the SWIFT system. So the SWIFT system being in the hands of the United States, this makes it extremely difficult for big companies and also for countries. And more importantly for them, the banking regulations are such that it would touch US big banks, or it would touch banks even in Europe. And because these banks are dealing with the US, if they come under sanctions, that's a risk they don't want to take. So how to circumvent the US stranglehold on the financial system has been the key challenge. That would continue to be the key challenge. But the issue in this particular case is that I don't think US is looking that it will get its way in the United Nations. It is going to go unilaterally, saying that I consider that the snapback has taken place because the Security Council resolution, that was the snapback proposition, a Security Council resolution would be required to mean that for the snapback not to occur, the subsequent to a complaint being raised in the JCPOA. So the snapback has occurred according to it because it considers itself for the purpose of this maneuver. It considered still an original member of the JCPOA. So now it claims the Security Council resolution has not taken place. And if it does not happen within 30 days, then the US interpretation is the UN sanctions are holding good, even though UN's interpretation is not going to be that. Doesn't look likely it's going to be that, given the fact the Western European countries, France, Germany, and UK don't seem to be going along with it. Russia and China are obviously not with it. So given 5 countries are not with it, it's unlikely it's going to get a majority even on the agenda of the United Nations Security Council. So given all of this, that's not the real issue. The real issue is that how much can United States push the rest of the world in dealings with Iran. Already, the United States sanctions have in effect made Iran's life difficult, and it's made Iran's exports really come down, particularly on the issue of oil. So given all of that, that is really where the US is wielding its powers. So I think the snapback sanction is just another propaganda ploy by Pompeo Trump, and it is claiming a victory. It will claim a victory that it has succeeded because the snapback is in place, because it gave a notice. So it is increasingly going to live in this fractured world, right, where the reality according to Trump and Pompeo are different according to the reality of all others. But the problem is the financial control that the US has, and that is something that the other countries will have to address sooner or later. Absolutely. That if they do not agree with the United States, the question is how far are they willing to go to create a truly multipolar world in terms of not only the geostrategic issues, but also in terms of the financial architecture of the world. And I think that's increasingly going to become the issue. That how can European Union, and this is really about European Union, it is UK, it is France, it is Germany. Sure. All three have disagreed with the United States on the JCPOA, on the question of Iran, and the value of the Iran nuclear deal. So are they willing to buck the United States or not? This is another pressure that the US is putting on them. How far they're willing to stand up to it is really the question.
Right, absolutely. And in this context, we do know that the European Union launched INSTEX, which was supposed to be an alternative payment mechanism to the United States-dominated SWIFT mechanism. And although it was not really very effective, it was basically meant only for humanitarian trade, nonetheless, it did mark a step. So do you think that the possibility of the US again becoming more aggressive on these sanctions might again say, push back some of these initiatives or lead to them being abandoned?
I think the real issue that is increasingly going to be faced, and it's going to be faced on a number of counts, is does the European Union have an independent position, particularly when it does not agree with the United States? Now, you can have an independent position, but you're ineffective in that position. You don't do anything about it. You make some vague noises that you don't pursue it. If that is the proposition that is there, then of course, European Union will do nothing. The question is, as increasingly United States starts disagreeing with the European Union on a number of issues, it's not only Iran. The other breaks that are going to come on that is trading with China, for instance, right. Trading with the Russians. With the Russians, there is the issue of what you know, the Nord Stream pipeline, oil pipeline. And on that, it's Germany, Turkey, countries like that, which are on the crosshairs of the United States. So are they willing to do something on that? Now, all of this is, I suspect, coming to a head if Trump wins the election. If Trump doesn't win the election, maybe Biden will try to get something back and try to reestablish some kind of NATO unity. At the moment, the US position is, my allies don't help me much. I'm carrying the burden. They have to sing my tune. I have the military power to protect them, and therefore they have to follow whatever I say. Now, if that is a position they don't accept, and increasingly with the fact that Russia and China are now clearly on the other side, what is the European Union's position be? Will it become an economic power? If it is an economic power, will it play its own hand, or it will still be dictated by the United States? That's a real question. And I think Iran, as much as China, as well as the issue with the Nord Stream and Russia, I think all of it brings it out. Now, for European Union, the bigger issue would be, for instance, Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia, because they're still part of Europe. So what do they do over there? Now, they have followed blindly, almost on the dot, the lead of the United States. Now, UK, after Brexit, is going to go much closer to the United States. What about the rest of the European Union? That is something that we have to see. Already on the issue, for instance, of the data protection law, you might be aware that on the data protection law, the European Union's court has given a judgment that data cannot be taken, or personal data of European Union citizens cannot be taken out to the United States servers, because the United States servers do not provide the European Union citizens with the same legal protection that the European Union provides on the question of privacy. And it clearly boils down to the fact that the United States does not provide any legal protection against intelligence agencies of the United States looking at personal data that is there stored on the servers if they're non-US citizens. If they're US citizens, we know the bulk orders are issued by the FISA court, so it's not much of a protection either. But at least there is a fig leaf of a protection. There is none for non-citizens of the US. That's something that should concern India as well. But the European Union, the highest court in the European Union, has given a judgment on that. And there are also issues regarding this big four, GAFA as it is being called, Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon, and also Microsoft, if you add to that. I think their combined market capitalization is today more than 6 trillion. Okay, and that would make them, if you take that equivalent to the GDP of countries, then that would make them the third largest in the world. Given that size of the market power that these software companies or digital monopolies wield, the European Union also has certain economic issues with the United States. Now, it's an uncharted territory for the European Union, which way it will go. Till now, it has not bucked the United States. It has said, yes, we don't agree with the United States, but they haven't, as we have discussed, they haven't really provided any concrete action in terms of accepting Iran's oil, for example. So given that, what is it that it is going to do? You talked about the foreign exchange mechanism they have set out with Iran. Russia has also a similar exchange. But the point is, whichever bank deals with it, even if it's a big bank of Europe, any of the European Union countries, the French banks or the German banks, and all of these transactions will take place to the banks, they themselves come under sanctions. Now, can they afford to do that? There's the same issue with State Bank of India. State Bank of India was earlier was allowing transactions, including Iran's oil. It was threatened with sanctions by the United States. Can the State Bank of India do that? And as you know, US has no compunction in seizing assets of foreign companies and foreign countries. So given that, everybody is scared that we have a rogue state, which is the global hegemon. And how do we fight it? Now, I think that's the challenge the European Union is facing. To me, Iran, nothing has changed. That the same threat they were facing, they're still facing. The real threat this time is to all other countries in the world. And that too, those countries which are supposed to be the US allies, how far are they willing to go, or how far are they willing to bend? That is a question. And will they continue to bend, or now will they take a position? No, we have to work out what is called strategic autonomy. The strategic autonomy is something we have been using in our show regarding India. Right. Well, it is strange, but I'm beginning to see the phrase being talked of more and more in the European Union as well, about what about strategic autonomy? We should be looking for strategic autonomy. Or will the Germans, the French, other European Union countries accept that they can bark, but they can't bite when it comes to the United States, and therefore all the noise they will make will be nothing. So I think the real issue on this, of course, are twofold. One is whether Trump will weather the pandemic storm in the United States and come back in the elections. At the moment, his prospects don't look so bright, but neither did it look bright last time. Right. So we can always be wrong on that one. This time may be more grounds to think that he may not win the election. But more important, and this is a much longer issue, does the United States have the ability to bend all its allies to its will, even when it is in the wrong? And that is something that we have to watch for.
Thank you so much, Prabir, for talking to us. That's all we have time for today. Keep watching News Clip.